She married the Alpha King to save her pack, but he never expected to fall first for his Luna. The collectors came on the coldest night of the year. Reyna Voss stood by the window and watched their torches move up the frozen road like a line of orange teeth. Her father sat at the table behind her, staring at a ledger that had ruined 3 generations of their family and was about to ruin a 4th. He did not look up when she spoke. "How much do we owe?" "More than we have," he said. "More than we'll ever have." Reyna had grown up hearing about the debt the way other children heard fairy tales. The Voss pack owed the Ashcroft crown for a war nobody living could fully explain anymore. Land, blood, an old promise broken generations ago. She had watched her mother pay a piece of that debt with her own exile, years back, walking out of the pack territory with nothing but a coat and a look on her face that Reyna had never forgotten. She still remembered the shape of her mother's back as she disappeared past the tree line. Nobody had explained that either. They never explained anything. They just let her pay for it in silence, the way the Voss family paid for everything. She was not going to stand at a window and watch it happen again. When the collector's second stepped into the house, Reyna spoke before her father could open his mouth. "I'll marry the Alpha King," she said. "The debt ends with me." The room went still. Her father started to protest, but the collector was already writing it down, and once something is written down in this world, it is very hard to erase. Reyna did not ask permission. She did not wait for her father to argue. She simply let the words leave her mouth and watched them become real, the way debts always seem to. She was married 3 weeks later, in a ceremony that lasted less than 10 minutes. Vardan Ashcroft did not attend the negotiations. He sent his beta to review the contract, and he signed it between 2 other appointments, the way a man signs off on a shipment of grain. When Reyna was finally brought before him for the binding, she studied his face for some sign of cruelty, or maybe kindness, or maybe just interest. She found none of it. He looked at her the way he looked at every problem that crossed his desk, already halfway to being solved and filed away. She curtsied wrong on purpose, dipping too low, too slow, an insult disguised as manners. It was a small thing, a useless little act of defiance, but she needed to do it, if only to prove to herself that marrying a stranger to save her family hadn't erased her completely. Vardan noticed. She saw it in the flicker of his eyes. But he said nothing, and the ceremony continued, and just like that, she was his. The palace was bigger than anything Reyna had ever lived in, and colder than any winter she remembered. She was given a wing to herself, a title, a staff of servants who would not meet her eyes. She learned quickly that nobody in that palace looked directly at their king's new wife, as if she might disappear the moment they acknowledged her. She spent her first week doing what she always did when she felt unsafe. She counted things, doors, windows, the number of steps between her room and the nearest exit. It was a habit from childhood, from growing up in a border pack where danger came without warning, and the smartest people were the ones who already knew which way to run. She noticed something else too. Every night, Vardan ate dinner alone in a dining hall built for 12 people. 12 empty chairs, 12 empty plates, set out by habit, never touched. Nobody explained why. Nobody dared to ask. On the 7th night, Reyna walked in uninvited, carrying a loaf of bread from the kitchen, because the palace bread, in her exact words, was criminally soft. She sat down across from him without waiting for permission. He looked up, clearly surprised, but he didn't tell her to leave. "You didn't invite me," he said. "You didn't invite anyone," she said. Seemed like a mistake worth fixing. He almost smiled. Almost. It vanished before it fully arrived, but Reyna noticed it, the way she noticed everything. She filed it away, the same way she filed every exit and every crack in the walls of this cold, beautiful place that was somehow now her home. Weeks passed. A skirmish broke out at the northern border, and Reyna was pulled into the war room without warning, seated at the edge of a table full of generals who clearly didn't expect her opinion and definitely didn't want it. She gave it anyway. One of the generals proposed pulling troops back from a ridge that Reyna recognized immediately. She had grown up along that exact stretch of border. She knew its weather, its blind spots, its history of ambushes. "That ridge floods every spring," she said. "If you pull back now, You're giving them the one path that stays dry. You'll lose it by morning." The room went silent. The general opened his mouth to argue, but Vardan raised a single hand, and the room stayed silent instead. He looked at Reyna, the way a man looks at a number he thought was fixed, only to realize it had been wrong the whole time. "She's right," he said. "Hold the ridge." Later that night, Reyna found herself unable to sleep, so she walked out to the east wall and did the thing she always did when her mind wouldn't settle. She counted the guard rotation like a lullaby, watching the same 4 soldiers pass the same 4 points over and over. She didn't hear Vardan approach until he was standing beside her. "Why did you offer yourself for the debt?" he asked. No greeting, no warning, just the question, dropped into the cold air between them. Reyna kept her eyes on the guards. "Because someone in my family had to stop running from the bill," she said. "My mother didn't get a choice. I wanted one." He didn't ask about her mother. Something in his face told her he already knew, and she didn't ask about the 12 empty chairs at his dinner table, or the name he clearly wasn't saying. Some debts, she was learning, were better left unpaid for now. They stood there together in silence, 2 people who understood exactly how heavy a debt could feel, saying nothing about it at all. Life inside the palace began to shift after that night, slowly, the way ice shifts before it finally cracks. Vardan started appearing at dinner more often. He began asking her opinion on border matters, then on trade matters, then on things that had nothing to do with matters at all. What she thought of the gardens, whether she preferred rain or snow, why she always sat facing the door. She never gave him a soft answer, and he never seemed to want one. Then came the festival. It was the first time Reyna had seen the palace grounds full of light and noise and laughter that wasn't forced. She dragged Vardan out of his study, insisting he actually watch the celebration, instead of reading reports about how much it cost. To her shock, he came. They sat together near the fire pits, and Reyna made some offhand joke about the palace bread being so soft it could double as a pillow. Vardan laughed. Actually laughed, a short surprise sound that seemed to catch him off guard as much as it caught her. Then a servant passing by called out cheerfully, "More wine for the queen." It was the first time anyone had called her that. My queen. The words should have meant nothing, just a title, just a formality. But Vardan's laughter stopped instantly, his face going still in a way that had nothing to do with Reyna at all. He stood up without a word and walked away from the fire, leaving his cup behind. Reyna didn't chase him for an explanation. She had learned enough about him by now to know that some things needed distance before they could be spoken. Instead, she waited until the festival wound down, then found him exactly where she expected, standing alone on the east wall, staring out at the dark tree line. She sat beside him and handed him a piece of bread, the good kind, the kind she'd been sneaking from the kitchen for weeks. He didn't take it right away. "Her name was Mirelle," he finally said. 4 words. No explanation after them. No story. Just the name, dropped into the night air like something he had been carrying too long and needed to set down somewhere safe. Reyna didn't ask who Mirelle was. She already understood. She didn't offer comfort, didn't reach for his hand, didn't fill the silence with soft words the way people sometimes do when they don't know what else to give. She simply sat there, letting the silence exist, because silence was clearly the only thing he had ever known how to accept. After a long moment, he reached over and took her hand instead, holding it like something he was finally willing to owe. Peace didn't last long. Word came that a rival pack, sensing weakness in a king who had suddenly grown softer since his marriage, was moving against the northern border, the same border that had taken Mireille from him years before. Vardan's first instinct was to lock Reyna away somewhere safe, far from any danger. She refused before he even finished the sentence. "I didn't marry a cage," she said. "I married a debt. Let me help you pay it." He studied her for a long moment. "Say it again," he said quietly. "So I know you meant it." "I meant it," she said. "Let me help." The battle that followed was not won by numbers or by strength. It was won because Reyna knew that land better than any general in the room. She knew where the rivers cut, where the ground gave way, where an army could hide and where it couldn't. She stood beside Vardan on that battlefield, not behind him, guiding his forces through terrain that had once belonged to her own family. When the fighting ended and the rival pack retreated, Vardan turned to look at her, covered in mud and exhaustion, and he saw something he hadn't let himself see in years. Someone standing beside him, holding the line, staying exactly where Mireille never got the chance to stay. That night, back on the east wall, he finally said the thing he had been circling for weeks. "You're not the debt," he said. "You're the thing I didn't know I was still owed." It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't flowery or perfect. But it was honest, and for a man who had spent years speaking only in numbers and obligations, it was everything. The following month, in front of both packs gathered at the palace gates, Vardan took the old debt ledger, the one that had haunted 3 generations of the Voss family, and burned it himself. No contract required it, no law demanded it. He did it because it was the only wedding gift that meant anything to either of them. Reyna still counted exits sometimes. Old habits don't disappear overnight. But she noticed, slowly, that she didn't need them the way she used to. That evening, for the first time since she had arrived at the palace, she sat down at the long dining table and found that all 12 chairs were filled, with staff, with soldiers, with people who had finally started meeting her eyes, and across from her sat Vardan, no longer eating alone, no longer haunted by empty places at his table. The debt that had once defined her family was gone. In its place was something neither of them had expected to find, and something neither of them had been looking for: a home, a partner, a love that had started as an obligation and ended as a choice.